Joaquim was a man of few words. His silence wasn't a choice, but a defense against the pain he carried inside. A solitary truck driver, he spent most of his life traveling the empty roads of Brazil, avoiding any ties, any person who might disturb him. He saw himself as a lost man, running from a past marked by bad choices and painful losses. The world felt too big for him, and his words too small to fill any space. Each night while driving, Joaquim felt the weight of a silent loneliness. His cab, the only place where he found any kind of comfort, was both his shelter and his prison. The roads were his only companions, and he surrendered to the feeling of constant motion, not knowing exactly where he was going, but knowing that his destination waited somewhere far off. But like every man who carries an invisible burden, Joaquim knew he couldn't go on like that forever. The silence that followed him was, in truth, a reflection of a deep hole in his soul, a hole he had never had the courage to face. He lived on the edge of his own story, never allowing himself to be touched by it. Yet, in the roads and in the people he met, he began to sense that something greater was waiting for him, something that could no longer be ignored, something that perhaps was more important than any journey. Chapter 1. The Road of Solitude. Joaquim was used to being alone. When he got into his truck and shut the door, all that could be heard was the engine's hum and the sound of the road beneath the wheels. He wasn't in a hurry. He was accustomed to the slow, monotonous pace of the trips, but something felt different that night. The sky was clear, cloudless, and the full moon lit up the road ahead. It was as if the universe was trying to show him something he wasn't ready to see. As he passed through a small village, Joaquim stopped at a gas station. The place was simple, with only a few people around. A sense of peace hung in the air, something rare in his hectic routine. He walked up to the counter, where the attendant, an elderly man, greeted him with a shy smile. "The road's long, isn't it?" the attendant said as he filled up the truck's tank. Joaquim just nodded as usual. He wasn't there to talk, but the man seemed to have more to say. The silence between them was heavy, but the attendant, unhurried, continued. "You know, sometimes people pass right by us without even noticing, like we're invisible. I see that in you, always on the move, always distant. But the truth is, the one who's really far away is ourselves, isn't it?" Joaquim looked at the man, but said nothing. He felt a slight ache in his chest, a discomfort he couldn't quite place. That simple conversation felt deeper than any he had ever had. Before he left, the attendant said, as if sharing a secret, "Be careful, my friend. Sometimes it's the silence that traps us the most." Joaquim stood there for a moment, staring at the empty station as the truck was being prepared. He felt a strange connection to the man's words, as if somehow he had spoken about his own life. But, as he always did, he pushed the thought away and moved on. The silence wrapped around him once more, but something had started to change. Chapter 2. The Weight of Loneliness. Days went by, and Joaquim's loneliness only grew heavier. He traveled from city to city, but nothing seemed to fill the emptiness inside him. He stopped in small villages, yet he always chose not to get involved. His visits were brief, and he quickly hit the road again, as if running from something he couldn't even name. However, something unexpected happened during one of those stops. In a small town, Joaquim came across an elderly woman, Mrs. Lucia, who called out to him when she saw him and invited him to sit down. She was alone on the sidewalk, her expression serene, yet her presence seemed to have the power to calm any inner storm. Joaquim didn't know why, but something inside him made him take a seat beside her. No words were exchanged for a long while, but the silence wasn't heavy like the others he had known. Mrs. Lucia, with her calm and observant eyes, eventually broke the silence. "You're carrying a heavy burden, aren't you?" she asked, looking at Joaquim with a gentle smile. Caught off guard, Joaquim looked at her but said nothing. She went on. "I'm no fortune teller, but I can see in your eyes that you're running from something. I don't know what it is, but I know the road won't save you. Whatever it is you're carrying inside, you'll need to face it." A deep pain welled up inside Joaquim as he heard those words. He had never spoken about his past. He had never allowed anyone close enough to understand what troubled him. But Mrs. Lucia didn't seem to want to intrude on his pain. She simply watched him with quiet understanding. In that moment, Joaquim realized that what he feared wasn't loneliness itself, but the fear of facing what caused it. Chapter 3. The Encounter with the Past. Joaquim's truck moved along the roads like a silent shadow, gliding through the night as he reflected on Mrs. Lucia's words. Every mile he traveled felt heavier, as if the air around him was thick, with something he couldn't fully grasp. The silence that had once been his refuge now pressed on him in a different, uncomfortable way. He wasn't sure what had changed, but he felt that something was about to happen. That morning, as the sun began to rise on the horizon, he received a letter, a simple envelope, his name written in a handwriting that felt strangely familiar. He hesitated before opening it, as if touching those words would stir up something buried for many years. When he finally opened the envelope, a lump formed in his throat. It was a letter from his sister, Anna, someone he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. "Dear Joaquim, I know you must be wondering why I'm writing to you after all this time, and I understand because the blame is mine. It always was. But I feel like we need to talk. We need to understand each other. Life pulled us apart, yes, but I'm still your sister, and I still miss you. No matter how much time has passed, the memories haven't faded. I'd like to try again if you can forgive me, and if there's still room in your heart for me. With love, Anna." Joaquim felt the weight of those words like a stone. He stood there staring at the letter with teary eyes, yet with such a heavy feeling in his chest that he couldn't quite understand what he was feeling. For so long he had isolated himself from everything and everyone, but that letter seemed to carry a force he could no longer ignore. The past, somehow, was knocking at his door again. He tucked the letter into his pocket and continued driving, but Joaquim's mind was now caught in a storm he didn't know how to control. That letter, with its simple, sincere words, seemed to have cracked the wall he had built over the years. Every curve in the road felt harder to navigate. He wondered if it was possible, in any way, to go back in time, to fix the mistakes of the past and rebuild what had been lost. In the days that followed, Joaquim felt a strange sensation. Something inside him was shifting, but he didn't know what to do with it. The silence, once his chosen companion, now felt heavier, almost unbearable. He thought about how he had run from everything and everyone, how he had drifted away from his sister after the fight that tore them apart. A fight he could barely remember, yet it had left such a deep mark on both of them that reconciliation had seemed impossible. It was during one of his trips, while driving down the same road he always took, that something made him stop. A small, almost forgotten town stretched out alongside the road, a place without hurry, where time seemed to pass more slowly. He saw the town's name on a sign, São João das Águas. Something called him there. It wasn't a planned stop, but something inside him compelled him to take the exit toward that town, which wasn't part of his usual route. Joaquim didn't know why, but he felt he needed to stop. He parked his truck in front of a small square, where children played and a few women sat on benches chatting. The air was fresh, and the sound of the wind through the trees seemed to invite him to slow down. He got out of the truck and walked along the cobbled streets, searching for something he couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was a sign, or maybe just the desire to feel that there was still something more beyond the endless routine of his lonely life. Then he saw the old house, a simple house but with a nostalgic feel to it, as if time itself had forgotten it. He recognized it immediately. It was the house where he had spent his childhood, where he had grown up with Anna, his sister, and where the memories of his family still seemed alive within its walls and gardens. Joaquim's heart raced. He knew he shouldn't go in, but something pushed him forward, something he could no longer avoid. He walked up to the door and with a trembling hand rang the bell. He waited a few moments, and then the door opened. To his surprise, it wasn't a stranger who answered. It was Anna's mother. Donna Elsa, with her white hair and tired eyes, looked at him with surprise, but also with something deeper, a hidden sadness. "Joaquim," she said softly, "you've changed so much, but I still recognize the boy who used to run through these streets." Joaquim, his heart tight, didn't know what to say. Longing caught in his throat. He stepped into the house, and the smell of fresh coffee enveloped him, bringing back memories of simple, happy moments from his childhood, before everything fell apart. They sat at the table, and Donna Elsa spoke, unhurried. "Anna has been sending me updates, you know. She's tried to reach out to you, Joaquim, so many times, but you never answer. I understand the pain you carry, my son, but maybe it's time you look at what life still has to offer." Joaquim looked at Donna Elsa and, for the first time in many years, allowed himself to feel the pain of the past. He remembered the moments when he had been harsh, the times he had walked away from his sister without ever looking back. The guilt weighed on him like a mountain, and he didn't know how to carry it. But something inside him had started to crack. I don't know what to do. I hurt her. I hurt everyone. I walked away so I wouldn't have to face the pain. But now it feels like there's no way to run anymore," Joaquim said, his voice breaking. Donna Elsa smiled, as if she had always known this moment would come. "Sometimes, Joaquim, the biggest mistake we make is believing we're alone in our pain. Life isn't made only of loss, it's made of new beginnings too, and maybe now is the time for you to find that new beginning." Joaquim looked at Donna Elsa and felt that something inside him had changed. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he had to act now. He couldn't keep living as if the past was a shadow chasing him. He picked up the phone and, with a steady hand, dialed his sister's number. When she answered, her voice was so familiar, he could hardly believe it. The conversation was simple, but the words they exchanged had the power to start a new story. "Anna, I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to come back." And in that moment, Joaquim knew that the silence that had imprisoned him for so long was finally beginning to fade. Facing his past wasn't easy, but it was exactly what he needed to start rebuilding what he once thought was lost forever. Chapter 4. The Journey of Reconciliation. The days that followed that conversation with Anna felt like a new chapter beginning in Joaquim's life. The truck driver who had carried the weight of his solitude and guilt for so long was now beginning to open himself up to what the future might offer. There was still much he needed to learn, many wounds left to heal, but simply taking that first step already represented a great change. Joaquim couldn't deny that the idea of starting over scared him. For someone who had spent so much time running from everyone, the thought of approaching his sister and facing the past felt like an enormous challenge. But something inside him pushed him forward, something rooted in Donna Elsa's words. Life isn't made only of loss, but also of new beginnings. He knew he couldn't keep running from himself or from what he had done. He couldn't let time continue to be his enemy, something dragging him away from all that could be good and healing. The talk with Anna was just the beginning, but it would also test everything he had learned up to that point. He didn't know what reconciliation would bring, but he was willing to try. The phone rang one late afternoon while Joaquim was parked at a gas station, resting after another long journey. The ringtone sounded different now. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was an invitation, a call toward something new, something he knew he needed to embrace. "Hello?" Joaquim answered, his voice low, but with a thread of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. On the other end, Anna's voice was soft, yet full of emotion. She sounded uncertain, but also determined. Hearing his sister's voice, Joaquim felt a warmth in his chest, something he couldn't quite describe, but that was undeniably there. "Hi, Joaquim. I've been thinking about you and everything that happened. I know it's hard, but I really hope we can, I don't know, try to understand each other. I know what we did, both of us, was painful, but I believe we can still fix it. I believe in us." Anna's words struck deep in Joaquim's heart. It was hard to believe that something as simple as a conversation could change the weight of so many lost years. But hearing his sister speak, he felt as though a burden had been lifted off his shoulders. She still believed in him. She still believed they could move forward, as if not everything was lost. Joaquim closed his eyes for a moment, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. He knew the pain of the past wouldn't be erased easily, but his desire to start again was stronger. He needed this new beginning. He needed to believe that life still held more for him than the constant feeling of loss. "Anna, I miss you too. I also wish I could go back and fix everything, but you're right. What matters is now, and I want to try." There was a pause on the line, a moment when silence said more than words ever could. Then Anna responded, her voice trembling but full of hope. "So, would you come here? I'd love to see you. Let's talk, Joaquim. Let's try to rebuild what we lost." That promise of rebuilding, of beginning again, was exactly what Joaquim needed to hear. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he was finally ready to take that step. He grabbed the truck keys and, without thinking twice, started the engine. The sky was getting darker as he drove, but instead of feeling the weight of the road, he now felt the lightness of possibility. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that future was directly connected to what he was willing to change within himself. He couldn't stay trapped in his own pain. The only way forward was by taking the first step, and he was determined to do it. The road to the city where Anna lived felt longer than ever. The solitude of so many past trips was now being replaced by a sense of anxiety and expectation about what was to come. He knew that once he got there, he wouldn't just face his sister, he would face himself. He would have to deal with the mistakes he had made, the words he never said, and the love he had let slip through his fingers. When he finally arrived at Anna's house, he stood still for a moment at the gate. The house looked peaceful, like a memory from the past. But as he looked at it, Joaquim also saw a reflection of the future, the possibility of a new beginning, a second chance to rewrite his story. It wasn't too late. He still had time. Anna greeted him with a shy but sincere smile. Their reunion was quiet at first, as if both were carrying the weight of unspoken words and still healing wounds. They sat together in the garden, surrounded by the calm the small town seemed to offer. The conversation that followed wasn't easy. They talked about what had happened, about the mistakes, about the hurtful words that had built up between them over the years. But at the same time, the conversation brought something Joaquim hadn't expected: understanding. "I understand, Joaquim. I made mistakes too, but we're here now, together. We can't change what happened, but we can make what comes next matter. We can at least try." Anna's words filled Joaquim's heart with a feeling he hadn't known in a long time: hope. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew he was taking the first step toward a new journey, toward a new chapter in his life. And in that moment, looking at Anna, he knew he wasn't alone anymore. He still had his sister. He still had a family to rebuild. At the end of that evening, with stars starting to appear in the sky, Joaquim said goodbye to Anna with a smile on his face, a smile that was no longer just a mask to hide the pain, but a genuine one. He didn't know exactly what tomorrow would bring, but now, more than ever, he was ready to face whatever came, alongside the one person who still believed in him, his sister. And so, little by little, Joaquim's journey began to transform. He knew that no matter how hard the past had been, the future was still ahead, full of possibilities waiting to be written.